Welcome, everyone, to another edition of the Tony Sirianni podcast. I am very happy to have David Scranton, who is the founder of the Sound Income Group, with us today. Thanks for being with us, David.
Great to be here, Tony. Thank you.
So, what probably nobody knows is that we were classmates at Trinity,
Yes,
1987.
which
You
we didn't
were
even find out about until recently.
I know it's
Funny part.
crazy, and we knew a lot of the same people. And you were a weightlifter down there, so an athlete and weightlifter. I don't know if you're still doing that, but I think I beat you up in school, didn't I?
Oh yeah, yeah. You
I
took
used to
me
like to
down.
fight with the big guys.
You took me down like this. That was it.
Well, at least you remember it correctly. That's good. No, so you went from Trinity. Let's talk a little bit about the origin story, like like Superman. How you got from A to B. So you graduated school. What'd you start to do, and how'd you get to where we are? Which I think advisors would find interesting because you have an advisory business and this other practice. So
It was interesting. My first 2 years at Trinity, I was pre-med. My aspiration had always been to go to medical school. And
wow,
the summer after sophomore year, I decided not to. And I knew that I didn't want to go to school for any more than 4 years. And in large part, I was paying for it myself and taking loans, right? So that gives you a lot
yeah,
of motivation to graduate in 4 years. So I just asked myself, what is the one thing that I can major in, switching gears halfway through and still graduate on time? And the only thing that I was naturally gifted at was mathematics. So I switched my major to mathematics, took 4 math courses every semester and graduated. But along the way, because I was putting myself through college, I was bartending. And I was bartending one time, and there was this girl that would come in, and she drove a Mercedes, and then she drove a BMW, and then she drove a Jaguar. Finally, I said, "What is it
Trinity.
your father does?" And she was a waitress there. And she says, "Well, he sells insurance." And I said, "Really? Can I have a conversation with him?" "Sure." So I sat down with him and he said, "Look, in the financial service industry, you could make as much money as you're worth, not how much some manager thinks you're worth. You can make what you're worth and
Yeah.
you can have freedom and autonomy." And that's all I needed to hear. Those were the magic words, and there was no turning back.
Well, I think that's great, especially to have, that to make that determination, young. I think it just sets you off, you're starting out with the right attitude in a smart way. And for most people, it takes a long time to realize that. This is also a great career for people who, it's like a second career, right? And you learn you learn the hard way that you don't like working for somebody else. What I thought you said was really great about your net worth, your what you're worth, it takes a while for a lot of people to figure that out.
Yeah. Yeah. And it was the thing I was always worried about just, so maybe I was always the kind of to kind of shake it up a little bit and do things
Yeah.
my way. So I knew I had the potential to really upset some manager, maybe butt heads with that person. And as a result, maybe just because of political reasons, don't get a
Yeah.
raise or don't get a promotion. And so I kind of knew myself well enough to go off on my own and to do that. But it's interesting. A lot of people start this business, Tony, as you know, and they're naturals, right? They take right
Yep.
off and they do well. That wasn't me. I mean, I actually my first 7 years, 8 years, was really struggling, failing, arguably out of the business to a point where I found myself 8 years in going back to UConn Medical School to interview,
Oh, geez.
thinking maybe I would go to medical school after all. So
Well, see, it's interesting.
luckily I didn't.
It's interesting because you're, the math and the medical school, you don't usually equate with, economics, maybe English or history guys who are great salesmen, they're out there. So that's interesting that you had that background and you went about it logically. You made the right assumptions and the right thoughts in the beginning, like we just talked about, that this is, not for you. But I wonder if that math brain then took you to where you ended up with the, this terrific strategy that you have, and sort of you took an analytical view of what a lot of people look as a salesman job. Like I'm sure that waitress's dad was the best salesman you ever met, right? That was what he did.
Mhm.
And you took sort of the math brain and turned it into something. I think that's interesting.
Well, there is a part of that for sure, but not as big as you might think.
Yeah.
Um, I would say the most notable time for me was 1999 when I was a student of the markets as a CFA, a charter financial analyst,
Yeah.
right? And I guess if you're not good mathematically, you're not going to be able to become a CFA to begin with. So there's that. But my big issue was I was worried about the market turning. I was worried about the tech bubble bursting. I kind of saw it happening. I knew from my studies of market history that when it turned, it was going to be a long time before things got better. And indeed, it took the NASDAQ, what, 17 years to get back to break even after that.
Yeah.
And I said, well, I need to protect my clients. So I pulled all my clients out of the market. I put them in bonds and preferreds and even some annuities. And I was happy. I just did the right thing. But the side effect of that was absolutely remarkable. My business then grew tenfold in the following 6 years. Tenfold in 6 years. And the reason was because I fell into this niche. I didn't analytically create the niche. I'm just trying to help my clients from losing their shirt in the market, right? When the tech bubble burst. But by creating this niche, people came by, maybe 2005 or so to say, hey, you want growth? Go to AG Edwards, go to Shearson Lehman, right? All those places that used to exist back then. You want income? Go see Dave Scranton. And because I became known with that niche, that was mine, I had that tenfold increase in
So,
6 years.
so that kind of speaks to, in your book, which advisors should check out, it's Attract and Grow book. You talk a lot about, you know, this growth in your business, how you didn't chase business, and you see a lot of advisors chasing business, and how sort of that's like
Mhm.
sort of leaves a bad taste with people and has sort of a negative. So let's talk a little bit about attracting. So you had this growth, obviously a great idea, and you were, everybody was looking for growth, and you were income, so you had sort of this, opposite effect kind of thing.
And I stumbled onto it because I
Yeah.
had a goal, I want to say 7 years, 6, 7 years before that to attract and not chase. Because I'd go and I looked at the biggest producers at any conference, and they were doing multiples of what I was doing for production. They
Right.
weren't any smarter than me. They didn't care about their clients anymore, and they certainly weren't working any harder. I was out working all of them. Why were they doing 10 times what I was doing? And they made it look seamless, effortless, right? So I kind of made it my mission to become a student of how to attract and not chase. But this business model component is something that really leapfrogged me toward that goal. And again, I kind of fell into it, really just trying to do the better thing for my clients. And sometimes that's for those of us that are spiritual that are listening, they might say, hey, that's a God thing. That's how it works. You do the right
Yeah.
thing, and good things get returned. Some people might say it's a law of reciprocity. I'm just fortunate that it happened.
So it's interesting. So we talk about another thing you talk about in the book is differentiation, right? So this is
Mhm.
clearly a way for you to differentiate yourself from other advisors as part of this, hockey stick of growth, that you had. So talk a little bit about how you think advisors today can differentiate themselves and the importance of it.
Well, the importance of it is we talk about in the book, because we talk about the old marketing formula, the acronym of which is AIDA, AIDA. And the idea of AIDA is that in marketing, the first thing you've got to do is get somebody's attention.
Yeah.
Then you got to grow that attention to interest, and then you have to grow that interest to desire, and ultimately that desire to action. And but then the question becomes, and the idea is you get people moving towards you maybe slowly at first, and then at a faster pace, and then even quicker and quicker and quicker until they're just almost begging you to become a client. So that first step, though, attention, is where that differentiation comes in, right? Think about it, Tony. If you blend in with every single competitor, if you have no point of differentiation, it's impossible to stand out. It's impossible to get people's attention because you
And
like
products have become
competitor.
so commoditized, right? I mean, the world has become much more commoditized than it was than when you started or we started in this business. It's
And and we let people commoditize us,
Yes.
unfortunately, because we don't know how to fix the problem. So think about it, right? If you said, okay, I've got some back pain, and I went to 4 different medical professionals, they recommended 4 different things. First I might think that's kind of strange. But then if you finish your thought and said, well, Dave, one of them was an orthopedic surgeon, one's a physical therapist, one's a chiropractor, and the fourth was an acupuncturist, all of a sudden I'd say, oh, I get it. They all do different things. See, in the medical field, Tony, we know that different specialists do different things. Therefore, they might have a different view or solution for whatever ails you. But in the financial world, they size us up to be the same. Oh, Tony's a financial advisor. Dave's a financial advisor. Isn't that great? They're both financial advisors. That's literally what they think.
And literally, you work at a big wirehouse, they're selling the same stuff. You're literally buying the same stocks, you're buying the same bonds, the same money managers. It's the same.
Mhm. So for us, we fell into that point of differentiation, like I said, a quarter century ago. And, we did it with that income specialty. And you see, here's the thing about specializing. It's got to be like Goldilocks. It's got to be just right, right? If your specialty is too wide, well, then you're really a generalist. It's hard to start that attention getting process. If it's too narrow, then you might service too few people, and it may be a real challenge to have a profitable business. So your specialty has to be just right. And that income specialty that I stumbled on a quarter century ago is just right. And here's the theory behind it in general, right? If you are selling anything, I don't care, it could be selling widgets, right? And I plopped you in some town you'd never been to, somewhere in the United States, and said, okay, you have two choices. You could sell something that 100% of the population wants to buy, but you've got 100 competitors in your town.
Right.
Or you can sell something that maybe only 10 or 20% of the population wants to buy, but guess what? You have zero competitors, right? What's the smart person choose, A or B, right?
So yeah, and but what I like about this income strat, from what I've seen and in talking to you over, time here, it applies to more than just a narrow gauge. That's kind of the beauty of this, especially not a lot of guys specialize in
It
it,
does now.
but a lot of people can use it. I mean, it does have application over sort of a broader area.
It does now. Now, remember, right during the tech bubble, trying to convince people they should get out of the markets and have more income. That was a bit of a challenge. That might have been 10 or 20%. But now, as the baby boomers have gotten older and the Xers have gotten older, all of a sudden, you're right, it's grown to maybe 30 to 50% want that.
Yeah.
But still, if you think about the people whom you talk with, you interview people every day, you write about people every day, think about how few of them have successfully branded themselves as the go-to person specializing in the universe of income generating options, right?
Yeah.
Hardly any. And that's
And
unfortunate.
and so you not only obviously can coach advisors through this, but you can help them figure out how to make this actually part of what they do every day, right? Because it's a daily, you got to get at it every day.
Part of their niche, that's right. And because there are some large firms that say they're income specialists, but all they do is they try to get total return and they try to engineer the income through systematic withdrawals using, let's say, the 4% withdrawal rule or using a buckets of money approach. It's not true income. So we teach advisors, first of all, how to generate true income. Most advisors don't realize how much they can earn in interest and dividends if they know how to do it. Back in the bowels of the interest rate environment, right, when the 10-year treasury is 1.5%, we were getting clients 4% interest and dividends net of fees, after fees, even then. And it's a lot higher today.
Yeah.
So the first thing we do is teach people how to really generate income in portfolios. The second thing is then how to generate leads in an attraction-based method, right? How to continue that attraction methodology through your sales process. So you don't use old school or outdated sales tactics that spook the prospect and, metaphorically speaking, the prospect turns and runs from you, right? How to
Right.
keep that attraction process going. And then lastly, we teach advisors how to manage their practice effectively, whether they want to be the only advisor and just build some staff members around them to support them, or whether they want to build a multi-advisor practice. So
Well,
it's really coaching everything around everything they need to have that income-based business model.
yeah, I mean that's fantastic. You just, I mean, there are mutual fund companies, BlackRock. They try to make a living at putting out these different coaching models, but it seems to me that this could be a lot more effective because it's so focused. So I think that combining the
Mhm.
attraction with the focused sense, in other words, if I'm doing this specialization and I'm doing this income strat, I'm already specialized. I'm already creating the AIDA stuff that I need to sort of get going. So it really works hand in hand. I like that.
Yeah, and I love the income model because of where the boomers and the Xers are, and that nobody's really doing it the right way. Trying to get people to generate enough interest and dividends to retire comfortably and give them an inflation hedge. But it doesn't have to be that niche. Anybody listening to us today needs to find a niche about which they're passionate and to be a specialist. Because here's the thing, you know, don't fall in the trap of being scarcity minded. If you're
Right.
scarcity minded, you think, oh my goodness, well, if I'm going to specialize, it means I need to give up my clients that want these other things. If you're abundance minded, you're smart enough to realize that by specializing, you will attract more people than you will repel. Let me say that one more time. You will attract more than you will repel by having the courage to specialize. And
Yeah.
that's one of the biggest limiting beliefs that advisors need to get over in order to truly start that attraction process, that first A, you know, attention in the AIDA formula.
You did mention, I don't want to gloss over because you talk about it in the book too, the creating successful teams, how advisors can do that. Uh, Talk about time management. That could take a lot of time for advisors. It's extremely difficult to source people, these days. So I'm wondering if some of this attraction model helps with finding, people who advisors love other successful advisors. I've always found that in my career. They're going to love to hear your story. They just like to hear what other people are doing, and they're attracted to success. But some of the keys to building a successful team from your point of view.
Well, first of all, even if you're a sole advisor and you start to build some team members, I always talk about the $50 million practice that you could bring in 50 to 100 million a year of new assets year after year after year, like clockwork,
Yeah.
especially if you follow a lot of the systems that we teach. And you can do that with really 4 staff members. You can have somebody who's booking appointments for you and keeping your calendar filled with quality. You can have somebody processing paperwork in new business. You could have somebody helping you with client service who's actually taking the reviews off your hands. You could have somebody handling the front desk and doing all the supporting everybody else, right? But even those folks want to be part of a successful growing organization. They want to be part of something that's meaningful. So even when you're hiring your team members, it's important to talk about the why you do what you do and why it's so beneficial. And when I talk about the income message, people want to come to work as for part of my practice because I also still have a practice in addition to our headquarters and our parent companies. But what you're referring to is if you want to then take it to the next level and build a multi-advisor practice, then you're right. Then that's when you have advisors that have to have that courage to say, wait a minute, by specializing, I will attract more than I will repel. And if they see the magic in that and they see why it makes so much sense, then you've got somebody that you recruit. And see, a lot of people are afraid to build multi-advisor practices because they're afraid they're going to be hiring and training their own competitors down the road, that they're going to leave. Well, the reality is that's not true. If you do it the right way, it doesn't have to be that way. And the key I find is providing value, not just providing that unique business model, but providing all the value that supports it. So that advisor says, well, gosh, if I go out on my own, I need to hang my own shingle. I need to establish my own website. I need to hire my own team. I need to do all these things. My revenue might go up, but my net profit's not going to go up very much because I have to pay all these bills and complicate my life.
Yeah.
So by hiring the right type of person, you can have people that are loyal long term and build a thriving business and leverage that specialty about which you're passionate.
So that's a high note. I would normally like to end there, but I would say that I had one more question just about the book in general. What inspired you to sort of come up and write the book?
So I had written a few B2C books for the
Yeah.
consumer about investing for income, about other things like that. And frankly, it's our advisors because they're abundance minded, right? They don't want to just hog everything up to themselves. They said, you really need to write a book to teach other advisors because there's nobody out there doing what we do. And I said, well, don't you kind of like it that way, having that uniqueness? And they said, sure, but you owe it to for the greater good to do this. So they inspired me 2 years ago to do it, 2 years before. It just took a while to get it through the queue where I actually had time to write the book. And once we got into it, it was a lot of fun. And it goes to my passion. I love helping people, but I learned 20 years ago that my real passion isn't seeing clients. My real passion is coaching financial advisors and helping them get to the next level. And that's what the book helps me with that mission.
Fantastic. Well, look, thanks for being here, David. Really appreciate it. That's a high note. I hope people get as much out of the book as I did and enjoy it. So thanks for doing it.
Tony, it's great being here. Great talking to you as usual.
Talk to you.